Today we're going to look at using the rectangular survey system to plot acreage. Now this is going to be useful for you if you're a land professional, because if you're running title to a certain tract of land, you have to know how that land, that legal description is written, and you have to know how many acres are in there so you can calculate what the bonus amount is. If you're putting this information into a lease, you want to be careful that you put it in exactly correctly. So to do that, you have to understand how to read and calculate these particular legal descriptions. So the first thing I would like to cover is how to calculate the acreage. This is really the easy part. The math is the easy part here, because every section is 640 acres. So what we do is we divide this 640 acres into 4 separate quadrants, and we label those quadrants. What the corner designation is the calls. This is the northeast quarter. This is the southeast, and I always think about the United States, northeast being like New York, southeast would be Florida, northwest would be Portland, Oregon, and southwest would be Phoenix, Arizona. So once we know that we have 640 acres, all we've done here is divide it into 4. So we're just dividing 640 by 4. 4 goes into 6 one time 4 is 4, 6 minus 4 is 2, 24, 4 goes into 24, 6 times 4 is 24, carry that 0 down. So each quadrant is going to be 160 acres. So this is going to be 160 acres, this is going to be 160 acres, this is 160 acres, and this is 160 acres. Now that 160 acres can be divided in half. If we divide 160 acres in half, we have 80 acres. So this will be 80 acres and this will be 80 acres. Again, all we've done is divide that 160 in half. Now we can also divide the 80s in half. So here we are with the 80s. And we can divide that 80 in half. Half of 80 is 40. So these are each 40-acre tracts of land. And we can go any further. We can divide the 40. So you have 40 here, and I'm going to divide those in half. Half of 40 is 20. So these would each be 20-acre tracts. And you can continue. You can divide the 20 into 10. You can divide the 20 into 10. This would be 10. This would be 10. You could divide that 10 into half. This would be 5. This would be 5, etc., etc. So the math is really the easy part of the equation, because all you're doing is subdividing this acreage, this 640, into either fourths or half of that fourth or half of that fourth. And you just keep drilling down until you get to the actual acreage in the tract. So that's calculate the acreage. That's the first part of this equation. Now let's look at how we locate the following legal descriptions. So the first thing I'm going to do here is for the northwest quarter is I'm going to put my designations up here. Remember, I'm thinking about New York, I'm thinking about Florida, then I'm thinking about Washington, and here I'm thinking about Arizona. So the northwest quarter, I'm just going to go to this part right here, and I'm going to designate that. I'm going to color it in as the northwest quarter. Very simple, very straightforward. How many acres is in this 640? In this northwest quarter? Well, it's 640 is divided into 4, so this is going to be 160 acres. Now let's look at the second one. This is the southwest quarter. So again, I'm going to put my designations in the corner. My designations in the corner: northeast, southeast, northwest, and southwest. And this is going to be the southwest quarter. So all we're going to do is the 640 is divided into 4. We're going to find the southwest quadrant, and we're going to color that in. How many acres is that? It's just like over here. We've just divided the 640 into 4s. That's going to be 160 acres. Okay? Now let's look at number 3 over here. This is number 3. And so this says the south half of the southwest quarter. Okay, now we're getting a little bit more complicated, but it's nothing to be intimidated by. But first, I want to tell you that some people write it this way, S/2, SW/4. Other people will write it without the slashes. They'll just write S2, SW. And that is the same thing. That is the south half of the southwest quarter. So just be aware, or they could put south half, southwest quarter like that, or they don't even have to put the number. So that is the same thing. That's the south half of the southwest. That's the south half of the southwest. It's all the same thing. So you just need to recognize you may not see it on a deed or in a lease with the slashes. It's still the same thing. So let's look then at the south half of the southwest. Now the key to reading these legal descriptions is you start from the back. So you read it backwards. So when you see the south half of the southwest quarter, you immediately go to the southwest quarter. So let's go ahead and label these northeast, southeast, northwest, southwest. Okay, and this is going to be the south half of the southwest. So here we are in the southwest quarter. We'll start there, read it backwards, and it's going to be the south half of that. So this would be the south half of the southwest quarter. And what would the acreage would be for that? How would you calculate the acreage? Well, it's 160 here in the southwest quarter, and we've just divided that 160 in half, so that means it's going to be 80 acres. Let's read another one. This is the northeast of the northeast. Question 4 here. Northeast of the northeast. So again, we're going to put our corners down. Northeast, southeast, southwest, southwest. And so the northeast of the northeast, we read it backwards. We start with the northeast. That's here. Then we're going to subdivide that northeast into 4. And then this would be the northwest. This would be the northwest, the northeast, the southwest, the southeast. So this is the northeast of the northeast. So that's going to be right here. And what's the acreage going to be for that? Well, we know it was 160, and that 160 was divided into 4. So that's going to make this 40 acres each. 40 times 4 is 160. So this is going to be also 80 acres. Okay, so the last one is going to be the trickiest one. And the reason it's tricky is because it has a comma in it. So when you have a comma, what you need to remember is that you read it backwards and that the comma here designates that it's 2 different tracks. See, when we say south half of the southwest, there's really no comma between the 2 of them. But once we see that comma, that means we're going to have 2 different tracks on here, not just 1. So let's start from the back. Again, let's start with the south half of the southeast. We're going to put our quarters calls on there. So this is the northeast. This is the southeast. This is the northwest. This is the southwest. Okay, so the first one we're going to do is going to be the south half of the southeast. So we start with the southeast, we read it backwards, southeast, and then it's going to be the south half of that. So this would be the south half of the southeast. Okay, so we know that's 160 divided by 2, and that's going to be 80 acres for that tract. That's going to be tract 1, or it could be tract 2. So then let's read this one. This is the north half of the northwest. That is a completely different designation because of the comma. So when we have the north half of the northwest, we're going to come up here to our northwest quarter. Again, remember we're reading this backwards. And we're going to go the north half of that northwest quarter. And then we're going to color that in. So then we'll have tract 1 and tract 2 here. This tract 1 is going to be 80 acres. This over here is 80 acres, so the total acres on the lease is going to be 160 acres, 80 plus 80. So that's how you calculate these rectangular survey system or congressional or Jeffersonian survey system to plot acreage, either for a lease or if you're running title or if you're working a division order and need to understand how to calculate that decimal. This is going to come in very handy for you. I hope you enjoyed this, and I look forward to seeing you in the next presentation.